Hey, and happy Tuesday. I'm Ryan Duffy, the managing editor of Payload and host of Pathfinder, a new weekly show where we sit down with the top shot callers in space. Questo è l'episodio numero 2 di Pathfinder.
Today's guest is Rob Meyerson, the founder and CEO of Delalune Space, a management consulting firm. Delalune literally means of the moon, and it's why I flexed my amateur Italian up top.
Rob served as the president of Blue Origin for 15 years, where he reported directly to Jeff Bezos and oversaw Blue's rapid expansion from 10 to 1,500 employees. Rob also oversaw development of new Shepard, among many other programs, and we'll get into that, along with returning to the moon, building a lunar economy, investing in space during market downturns, and much more. But first, a word from today's sponsor. Our reliance on satellites for navigation, communications, commerce, and intelligence has grown exponentially in the new space economy. Unfortunately, the risks have grown as well, and the need to prioritize cybersecurity around space assets is critical. SpiderOak Mission Systems provides space cybersecurity products for military, commercial, and civilian operators. Their Orbit Secure solution is the first to deliver zero-trust security to zero-gravity environments, protecting space communication, command, control, data transmission, storage, and integrity at the data level. To learn more about Orbit Secure, check out their website at spideroak-ms.com. Again, that's spideroak-ms.com. And without further ado, Pathfinder Episode 2 with Rob Meyerson. Rob, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Ryan. It's a real pleasure to be here, and I'm a big fan of Payload, so I'm especially happy to be here.
Well, we appreciate that, and we're thrilled to have you as one of the first guests on the pod. So we have a bunch of exciting topics to discuss: our multiplanetary future, going to the moon, and all of that good stuff. But I want to start with some recent news. We are recording a day after Blue Origin, your former employer, announced NS-21 with a full crew of 6, and they will be taking off not too far down the road from me in Van Horn. It's 450 miles, which in Texas is not too far down the road. So just wanted to hear your impressions of that. And I don't know if you've had a chance to see the crew. And I know that there are a lot of logistical details we still don't know, but we'll hand it over to you.
Yeah, no, excited about that announcement yesterday. And Blue hasn't announced the date of the flight yet, but they announced the crew. And the first op is they've got Evan Dick is going to fly for the second time on New Shepard, which is exciting to see someone come back for a second opportunity. And then they have 2 astronauts that are sponsored by an organization called Space for Humanity, which was founded by Dylan Taylor, who's another New Shepard astronaut veteran. So exciting to see those 2 young people. And I think the thing that I noticed, there's 2 people named Victor on this crew of 6. And it's a very diverse group of folks. So I think that I just applaud Blue for really finding ways to give opportunities to experience space for a whole range of people, different backgrounds.
Definitely. And while you, of course, do not speak for Blue in an official capacity, you spent the better part of 2 decades working there. And I want to rewind a bit just so we set a foundation for our audience, and would love to hear about your time at Blue, your portfolio of responsibilities, the programs you led, and really what that was like scaling up that organization.
Yeah. Well, Blue was founded in 2000. I joined in 2003. So for those first 3 years, Blue was a think tank. And Jeff Bezos had founded the company with the idea that we need to find an alternative to chemical propulsion, a way to get more people into space. Over those 3 years, they investigated a lot of ideas. I joined right at the tail end of that and really built the New Shepard team and was the president of the company from 2003 to 2017 and reported directly to Jeff Bezos for much of my tenure there. I left in late 2018, and my portfolio included pretty much everything but raising money. I mean, it was product, it was engineering, HR, finance, legal, production, manufacturing, sales, marketing, safety, all the functions that you'd have in a company. But I started with, 10 people and grew it to 1,500 when I left. So had to really build up all those functions from scratch. And that included leading, decisions to build out, the West Texas launch site near Van Horn,
Hmm.
selecting and building the site in Florida, selecting the site in Alabama, which was built out after I left, building an engine business to sell, rocket engines to United Launch Alliance,
Right.
and as well as developing new Shepard, which we just talked about.
So really the full stack of duties at any company, to your point.
Yeah.
And I imagine when you're starting from scratch and you're at a spaceflight company, there are parts of some of that portfolio that are a little bit more challenging. Can you say anything else about, while you were scaling from 10 to 1,500, what the unique challenges might have been for private spaceflight company? Much more to your point.
Yeah, so the fact that we were a private spaceflight company and we were very quiet, and we were very quiet by design. Our owner Jeff had a philosophy of let's talk about things that we've done rather than things we're going to do. So we were super quiet, and usually, so one of the big challenges as a result of that was hiring, recruiting people. We're doing amazing stuff. It was really cool, but you had to get people's attention, and there wasn't a lot of marketing or a lot of blitz to what Blue was doing. So you had to get people in on a plant trip to see what we're doing, and then they could, then things would click for them and they would get it. But getting them to come in and visit took a lot of my time personally. We had a great recruiting team, but that was just something that I spent a lot of time on as well, and bringing in the right people, getting the organization set up right, and it's something that you're just always tweaking and adjusting, and as I indicated earlier, we were always in growth mode, so always looking for more people. So
always day one, right? And
yeah.
laying low and staying under the radar, or you being hired at Blue, you too kind of didn't know the full picture when you first caught wind of the opportunity. Is that right?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Blue was completely stealth. There was really no news, no information about it. In the middle of my interview process, Brad Stone kind of had an article that came out. I don't even remember which publication it was in, but right in the middle of my between my first and my first interview and my interview with Jeff, an article came out, but there really wasn't much to say about it, and it was very early days, and
Right.
and so I put my resume into submitted my resume into a black hole. A friend of mine told me he was working for a company that I might be interested in, and I said, well, I'd love to talk more about it, and got the interview from there.
There you go. And the rest is history. So thinking about those early days at Blue, at SpaceX, at some of the other companies, the industry must have looked a whole lot different. And the talent pool potentially must have looked a whole lot different. It is a tall order to fast forward to now, but can you say a little bit about how you've seen the workforce evolve over the years?
So when we started, the number of sort of success stories in space, commercial space, were few and far between. Orbital Sciences was a company that had been founded by three classmates. It grew. It was pretty prolific, big business at the time in the 90s, late 90s, early 2000s. But when Blue was started, the most recent commercial space story was Beal Aerospace, and Beal Aerospace was founded by Andy Beal in Frisco, Dallas area, Texas. They were building what we refer to as a big dumb booster, a hydrogen peroxide based, very, very large booster. And due to where he thought the market was going and the work with NASA, right around the time that NASA awarded the X-33 contract to Lockheed Martin, Andy Beal decided to shut that company down and laid everybody off. So 200 people lost their jobs. And so, the most recent story about commercial space was a negative one. And people we were recruiting were, wanting to be needed to be assured that this wasn't going to end up another Beal Aerospace. And so again, getting them into the factory to see, see what we're actually building was helpful and useful. But overcoming that story took extra work. And so, fast forward to today, and you have companies like SpaceX and Blue Origin who have, through people that have left the company and founded others, you have a whole tree of startups in the space industry. You have a whole flood of new private money that's come into the space industry that is, I saw a number, it's like $45 billion since 2015, which is, that's significant. That's 2x the annual NASA budget. So private money coming into the space industry has changed that profile quite a bit, but it's a lot due to, not all, but a lot due to the investments made in SpaceX and Blue Origin over the years and the success that they've had.
And in a prior conversation, when we weren't live, so to speak, before hitting record, you discussed this idea of talent density. Where do you observe that the pockets of density, that I suppose, where they're most prevalent, or where they're growing quickest?
Yeah, the highest density, of course, is in Southern California and the LA basin with historically with all the companies that have been there, and of course the addition of SpaceX and the Virgin family of companies, Virgin Orbit, Virgin Galactic, Relativity, ABL Space, et cetera. There's significant talent density in the space sector in Seattle now with Blue Origin and SpaceX Starlink and Amazon Kuiper. There's thousands of space professionals in that area. Denver is growing and well deserved. Denver Boulder area with CU Boulder and Lockheed and ULA and Beal Aerospace. Then at the next level down, I think it's growing in the DC area, Houston, Huntsville, the Space Coast in Florida, as well as Boston and San Francisco. I think if you go back into the universities, I always point to Purdue University and their rocket propulsion program as sort of the top of the chain. But then, you look at a lot of the startups. University of Southern California and the Rocket Propulsion Lab, RPL, has spawned some of the big leaders in the space industry, like Tim Ellis at Relativity and Joe Lorienti at Ursa Major, and a lot of the top propulsion people at Blue Origin, SpaceX, and a lot of the other companies I mentioned. If you go deeper and you go to Cornell and the Formula SAE race car team, has really fed a lot of the leading, structural mechanical designers into the new space industry. And then later stage, now we're seeing like the MIT Leaders for Global Operations program as a graduate program, feeding a lot of the operations personnel into the space industry as well. So,
and I'm sure as an investor and advisor, speaking to a lot of these future companies waiting to be born, that's pretty exciting proposition for you. Talk me through the decision to become an angel VC advisor. Obviously, I want to add the caveat that time horizons in this world and time horizons in space are very long. So multiply those two together, and it's still the early days. But I'd love to get your perspective on what that's been like so far.
Yeah, part of your question is what led me into the sort of investment community. And coming out of Blue Origin, I think the portfolio I had was everything but raising money. And I knew that most founders need to raise money. It's a very rare situation like the one I had at Blue where you have an owner who is 100% funding the company. And so I wanted to get familiar with that. And certainly my experience opened doors. I was able to meet with a lot of investors in venture and family offices and private equity and investment banks, and got to work with some VC investors, in particular recently at C5 Capital, working on the Axiom Space investment. It wasn't a decision to become an angel investor. It was opportunities that came to me one at a time. And when you meet a founder and you see that passion, that twinkle in their eye about what they're trying to build, in a small way, I can get behind that and support that. I can't write a big check, but I can help in other ways, and I think people recognize that. So my opportunities with companies like Hernius came with being an advisor. With Hadrian Automation came with just getting to know the founder, Chris Power, and just really, really appreciating and completely respecting what he's trying to do in terms of the aerospace industrial base. So angel investing just came to me, one opportunity at a time, and all of a sudden you've got this portfolio, and it's exciting and makes me want to look for more. So,
yeah. Did you find I've had some founders and CEOs who have been at this for a while say that back when they got started, and this is a while back, but if you were going out to raise for one of these types of very ambitious ventures, you would have been laughed out of the boardroom. Did you find that do you find that there's more of an increasing appetite and a feeling that, space is this investable, legitimate business, and that there's just more of an appetite for that?
I think there has been. I'm concerned that there might be a little pullback given
Right.
where the markets are going today. And I think, scratch beneath the surface a little bit and you look at space as a sector. I would encourage, you to do that, to go scratch beneath the surface a little bit. What you'll learn is, number one, the space industry investments really dominated by the government investments, and government investments aren't pulling back. They're going to grow or stay flat, more likely grow. We have a new new department in the Department of Defense called the Space Force, which is really a focus area for space. I only see their budget getting bigger. I see announcements about, like, from Amazon on Amazon Kuiper, which buying 83 launches from Blue Origin, United Launch Alliance, and Arianespace. It just has a ripple effect into right after that ULA announcement where they got 38 launches on their Vulcan rocket. They announced that they're buying 116 RL-10 engines from Aerojet Rocketdyne.
Yep.
They haven't announced officially yet, but there's talk that they're going to, definitely they're going to buy a whole order of strap-on solid boosters from Northrop Grumman. That deal may have been announced. I haven't seen for sure, but the ripple through the supply chain of these new big deals that are out there is enormous. And Ryan, you know this because you write about it. You see all of these deals. Every single one of those companies that's raising money, announcing a new launch contract, building a new constellation, every one of those needs machine shops, raw materials, fasteners, wire harnesses, electronics. So every company, and not every one of those companies can vertically integrate like SpaceX and Blue Origin can. So we need a strong industrial base, and I think the ripple effects are going to continue to be felt. And in space, we need that industrial base in the U.S. We can't always offshore that kind of stuff. So I think if you're an investor looking to follow the markets and pull back from space investments, I think you'd be making a mistake, because I think there's a lot of opportunities out there, and there will continue to be.
I think that's a great point. And I actually want to move on very soon to NASA procurement in particular. But on the topic of the defense industrial base, and to your point, there's so much happening, and just all of a sudden, with the Kuiper announcement out of Colorado Springs last month, a bunch of launch capacity is now booked, and the picture can change so quickly. At least for me, as someone on the outside, so to speak, looking in, I know space is a little bit different than a lot of other tech sectors. But do you think that we'll truly see this vibrant, competitive system of companies that are more horizontally integrating, and production, that a lot of production being reshored and everything? Are you optimistic about that?
Certainly optimistic about it. And when I joined the industry, we were in the midst of still in the middle of the first consolidation, and we watched companies like Lockheed and Martin Marietta, L'Oreal merge together, Boeing, McDonnell Douglas, Rockwell merge together. Back in the Apollo era in the space shuttle. Go study the space shuttle pre-phase A concept development phase, and there was a dozen or more companies that competed in that pre-phase A, including, Chrysler had a concept, Chrysler Motor Company, Convair, Douglas Aircraft Company, McDonnell Aircraft Company, companies that don't exist anymore, all participated in that. General Dynamics, they still exist, but they don't exist in the space launch space sector. And the government had choice. There's innovation, there's creativity. And I see with companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX entering the market along with the four big primes that are out there. You now have more choice. You have, I think, Leidos buying Dynetics is a good addition to the next tier of primes that are coming in, and I think, in the future, I'm optimistic we're going to see Relativity and ABL and Stoke Space and other companies in launch sort of step up into those opportunities as well. And I am optimistic about the next tier as well, in the industrial base, as we mentioned.
Yeah. Time for a short break to hear about our sponsors again. Space is the new frontier for cybersecurity. SpiderOak Mission Systems builds space cybersecurity solutions for civilian, military, and commercial space operations. Their Orbit Secure protocol delivers zero trust security to zero gravity environments, protecting space communication, command, control, data transmission, storage, and integrity at the data level. To learn more about how zero trust architectures will revolutionize security in new space, download the new NSR SpiderOak sponsored white paper titled Space Cybersecurity, Current State and Future Needs. Find the white paper at spacecyber.com. Again, that's spacecyber.com. Or check out their website at spideroak-ms.com. And tell them Pathfinder sent you.
Yeah. So let's switch gears to NASA and the agency's changing role in LEO, low Earth orbit, and beyond. In a lot of ways, switching from becoming the operator to being a customer. What could you characterize that for the audience in a more articulate way than me? And then, as a second part to that question, just elaborate on where you see a lot of opportunities and a lot of white space for some of the companies that you maybe you just listed, and companies that you are backing or advising.
First off, kind of the view of NASA, the view of the West is space is like, there is this space for Earth. There's most of the $350 to $400 billion that's spent on space is in services, remote sensing, communications, PNT, that kind of stuff. And then, the NASA budget, the space exploration kind of thing, it's science and exploration. And when you look over to China, it appears that their focus is more on economic and social kind of matters, like looking at the moon or Mars as the next frontier. And I think that we can, the way NASA's going, I think NASA, by enabling services and helping to create demand for those services, just like they did in commercial cargo and crew, continuing to build that out. Think of it that way. So NASA's role is to enable those services and create demand so that they can spend the rest of their budget on R&D and science and exploration, which I think is really pushing us to that next frontier. So cargo and crew on SpaceX, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman, and Sierra Space, Dream Chaser. Those capabilities are, there's been a lot of NASA investment, and these private companies are now, at varying levels of either servicing the customers or getting ready to service the customers. And we see, the benefits of that with the SpaceX Crew Dragon, with, not just, NASA crew missions, but Axiom 1, AX1 mission a few months ago, or the Inspiration 4 mission in the upcoming Polaris mission. So this is this is NASA being an anchor customer for a crew vehicle that can now be sold to other customers and used. We want to see the same thing with cargo as NASA goes on to sort of enable these LEO destinations like Axiom Station and the others, and then also, help to create the demand for those. There was a little noticed award a few years ago called Gateway Logistics for the Artemis program. SpaceX was awarded the Dragon XL to do cargo deliveries to the Gateway, and we'll see where that one comes out. I don't know. I haven't heard much about it since it was awarded. But what's next up right now, and in the just awarded, was the CSP, the Commercial Communications.
Yep.
Six companies that have demos. That's awesome. And then this month, NASA's going to announce the winner of the commercial spacesuits, the XEVAS contract, and that's exciting. So EVA as a service, both in LEO and on the surface of the moon are really interesting options to think about. I don't know whether NASA's going to award one or multiple, but the requirements, I would hope multiple, because the requirements are different enough between a LEO spacewalk and a lunar Mars surface suit. But we'll see. And then in the future, I see power, timing, location services, PNT, rovers, the LTV, I believe is going to be, awarded as a service. And on the rover, on the LTV, you see big aerospace primes partnering with car companies, Lockheed and General Motors. Northrop Grumman has a car company on their team, and I'm embarrassed that I can't remember who it is.
I actually can't either, so that's all right.
But I think what these things do is they enable NASA to just now their big $20+ billion budget is they're going to carve out to buy services, but a lot of that budget can be dedicated to new developments that can advance humanity out into the, become multiplanetary.
It's a really helpful taxonomy, and I'm supposed to be trying to elicit hot takes from you, but my hot take is that there will be a John Deere tractor on the moon within the next decade. But I have no inside information. It's just a guess. But I can see how a lot of those elements go hand in glove. Would it be correct for me to say that a lot of this is space to space, and that will be the big story over the next decade? Is this growth, the growth in demand from an anchor customer like NASA needing these products, and then there will be the knock-on commercialization spillover benefits in the same way as we've seen in LEO.
Yeah, people talk about the killer app. What's the killer app for the in-space economy? What's going to be that enabler? And if you think about what it's going to be in LEO, what are the things that we're going to, need a lot of floor space, manufacturing space to go build products that we can only build in low Earth orbit and can bring back to Earth and sell economically. I think we're still, that remains to be seen. And I think the reason it hasn't been discovered yet is because it's just too darn hard. It's too darn expensive to get to low Earth orbit. We've had a space station for 20 years. It's a remarkable vehicle operated by amazing people. But if I'm a CEO of a Fortune 500 company, it's hard to convince me why I should do that. Like it's go through all the wickets to get an experiment on the space station. It's just harder than it needs to be. And I think when we have private space stations like Axiom Station, you'll have the opportunity to have that true kind of one-click frictionless experience where I want an experiment on the station. I have an opportunity to get it up there this month, get results. And I don't have to go through NASA approvals and all those things. It's just you're working with one company, and we saw that. That's what we built at Blue Origin for New Shepard, for New Shepard payloads that get that 3 minutes of weightlessness, and we can do that in low Earth orbit as well.
That would be pretty great if it was as simple as an API or even one-click checkout. I could see how this advent, the coming golden age of commercial stations could help enable that. But I would imagine too that we would need the launch cost curves to continue dropping, and then more viable reentry capsules and more cost effective for pharmaceuticals, fiber optic cables, those sorts of things that are often or even organs that are named as, you know, the initial use cases for manufacturing in space at scale. And by at scale, I mean on a small stage for the foreseeable future.
Yeah. So today, you know, you've got a cargo dragon that's recovered. It lands in the water. Soon you'll have a dream chaser that lands on a runway. So you'll have opportunities. So if you're doing bioprinting on a commercial space station and you need to get an organ to a customer on a timeline, then you'll have options for doing that, as well as in addition to that, you have other companies like Varda that are building their own manufacturing platform and their own reentry vehicle. Inversion Space that's building their own capsules for bringing things back. And I think those are just interesting business plans, and we're going to need access to all of them to build a thriving economy in low Earth orbit and in deep space as well.
And to your point about the ripple effects of Kuiper's block buy, you know, the largest launch procurement in history, there are all of these second order, third order benefits for various machining shops, large companies. The list goes on, and I'm sure you have a lot more visibility and insight there than me. I want to go back to actually two recent comments from NASA officials. And the first is from Administrator Nelson. And this, of course, made a lot of waves. Essentially, the gist of what Nelson said is that the agency should move past cost plus contracting and more to fixed price. And I wish I could just define that right now, but I'm not going to use 5 minutes of our valuable time to do so. What were your thoughts on that?
I think he's onto something. I think he called cost plus contracts a plague on the industry. The bottom line is NASA and the industry, with the exception of a few companies, are just out of practice in building working space systems. You know, at the component level, we gave up on building rocket engines in the U.S., you know, 25 years ago. After the Cold War ended, we focused on Russian rocket engines, and you know, didn't 100% give up. I mean, built a few, but really reduced the investment, and I think that's paid a price. And private companies like Blue Origin and SpaceX have built their own engines, and that's led almost every new launch company to actually choose to build their own engines coming forward. Now, I think we need a thriving rocket engine industry, and we need more than one company that sells rocket engines and that's why Blue Origin is in that market, and I think that's why Ursa Major is bound for good things. But yeah, I think that you know, NASA is out of practice. They don't do enough programs. They don't do them fast enough. That, you know, they don't do upgrades. If you look at, you know, something like the Falcon 9 and the string of upgrades that led to where they are now with turning a vehicle around in 10 days and flying it again, or turning around the operation, flying once every 10 days, not a vehicle, I'm sorry. Still, that didn't come from just building a rocket and then harvesting it and not making any changes. And NASA's in this mode where, you know, the requirements are the requirements, and you can't change them. And I think it's just really slowed the industry down. And
I know I could see how that competitive spirit and economies of scale might be a good thing. And while we are on the topic of comments to Congress from NASA officials, Bob Cabana recently said, within us taping this, you know, being I think a week, maybe 2 weeks, but basically he said, to reduce it to one pithy line, we don't want to get stuck on the surface of the moon.
Yeah,
I think that's the exact quote, but I actually don't even have it in front of me. But we've scratched on the surface of the moon, no pun intended, but we've talked about what it would take to build that nascent economy and infrastructure and potentially return more permanently, in a more permanent capacity. What are your thoughts on that quote and treating the moon as its own destination rather than a stopover point?
Yeah. First off, I mean, that's part of a quote. And I don't know what the longer quote is exactly, but someone who invests in space, I'm glad that NASA, as you know, Bob Cabana as the number 3 at the agency, and he's saying we, meaning NASA, doesn't want to get stuck on the moon. And I think I think that's exactly what NASA should be saying. They want to use the moon as part of a longer program that'll get us to Mars and other planets. If I were starting a company, I'd love to start a company that is focused on the moon and generating economic benefit from that and supporting NASA and other customers. So if NASA's saying that, and I believe Bob did say that, I think that's exactly what I want to hear. That's exactly what my investors would want to hear. That not, I wouldn't take away that NASA doesn't think the moon's important. They just think that we can buy services from the moon as a stopover point.
Yeah.
Services in the form of propellant and resources and other things. So that we can afford to go on and do science and exploration, which is another big part of NASA's charter.
Are there any business models or any sorts of lunar services companies that really excite you right now?
Well, I think the whole group of CLPS landers excites me, because I think, certainly by the end of next year, we're going to have multiple landings on the moon from these private companies that have been enabled by NASA. So Intuitive Machines, Astrobotic, Mast in Space, Firefly, those are 4 companies that have been awarded CLPS task orders, and they're actively building their landers. There's 9 or 10 other companies in the catalog, so to speak, that are competing for the next opportunities. And so I think that's really exciting. I mentioned LTV. There's some smaller rover companies like Lunar Outpost and Astrolab that are creating some exciting technology that is focused on the surface of the moon and eventually going to other planets as well. When we get there, no matter what business it is that you're going to build, you're going to need mobility. You're going to need to land. You're going to need a cargo capability to service, either bring more robots or bring supplies for the humans that are there. So those types of companies really excite me, because they're just building out that infrastructure.
And in the mission or the charter, whatever you want to call it, of Delalune, there's a nod to mobility. Is that Earth mobility? Is it space mobility? Is it both? Because I just heard you say mobility, and that just
I consult with clients in space and mobility technology and investment. So that mobility is probably more Earth mobility. Primarily, it's been in electric vehicles and urban air mobility.
Yeah. I know NASA has rich history of enabling some of those foundational technologies for eVTOLs, electric vertical takeoff landing aircraft, and urban air mobility. It's a spectrum. Of course, getting out of the atmosphere is a little bit more difficult, but I think that makes sense. It's pretty intuitive to me. So we are going to transition over to just a few rapid fire questions before we close here. And while I have you, I can't not ask, would you say are the most underhyped and or overhyped aspects of space? It's a broad question. It's intentionally broad, and you can answer either. You can answer both.
Yeah.
Ball's in your court.
I think the underhyped thing is just what a great community the space industry is. You see it at the conferences. You see it in the way focus of the companies, the commitment they make, the people that you meet. So I think kind of team space is underhyped. It's not really talked about outside the industry, but I say this to a lot of folks. The space industry really pulls you in. It's such a mission and passion driven industry. You really got to believe, and it's getting its day now because we're having some great breakthroughs, but not surprised that it's growing the way it is. I think on the overhyped side, I take this as, the thing that I want to hear less of, and I want to hear less of space is hard. That I hear that
Okay.
quote all the time, and it's just sort of like, life is hard, work is hard, a lot of things are hard. Space is hard is often used as an excuse, and we don't need to make excuses for failures or missions not going the way they go. It happens. This isn't writing software. This is integrating hardware, software, complex legal regimes, and things like that.
So it goes without saying. I just made a note and underlined it a bunch as a writer. Try to adhere to that convention myself.
Hey, it's
And-
one man's opinion.
Yeah, well, it makes sense. And second question, you are an alum of University of Michigan,
Yeah.
memory serves. How often do you make it to the big house? Do you make it to the big house?
Well, not as often as I'd like. It's been about 4 years since I've been.
Okay.
We've had COVID in the middle there. Unfortunately, I gave away my tickets for last fall for the Michigan-Washington game, but I'm hoping to get back there this fall. And I do, I'm on the Dean of Engineering's Leadership Advisory Board, and I stay close to Michigan and would like to make it back. But I'd say my answer would be not enough. So
We actually just ran a reader survey, and I, one, was surprised by the amount of readers who responded, but two, the amount of students that we have in our audience. So for any of them listening who are really eager and excited to break into the aerospace industry, what's one piece of advice that you would give them? And I know that can maybe be tough to distill down into a couple lines, but if you had to try.
it's easy to focus on the big companies that show up at your career fairs, but there's a lot of really small companies out there that are just starting up, and they're not at that level of maturity yet to know to go to a career fair or can't afford to do that. But companies that are 10 to 50 people that can offer you some really exciting opportunities, even 10 to 200 people. The kind of experience I had at Blue Origin was truly one of a kind. But the experience I had as a NASA co-op at Johnson Space Center was also one of a kind. So I'm that rare person that's had like two really, really unique career experiences in my life. And I just encourage, I think to wrap this up, I think just look beyond the traditional opportunities that are out there and go for it. Use your network, use LinkedIn. Big fan of using LinkedIn for connecting with people and companies. And
The internet is your friend.
The internet is your friend. And don't expect that if you send a resume in cold to a company that you're going to get a response. You need to do some strategic networking and informational interviews and things that'll help you get connected to people. And if you do it in a very sincere way, it's going to lead to opportunities for you, whether it's with that company or something similar.
Yeah. And last question. You knew it was coming. I know that I'm actually currently reading Cryptonomicon, and I know that you worked with Neil Stevenson in at least some capacity as he was a special advisor to Blue Origin. So this might be a leading question, but what's your favorite type of sci-fi?
I love Neil's books. So I Seven Eves was fantastic, and just really, really brought up just a lot of interesting themes and concepts.
Awesome. Rob, thanks so much for the time. This has been a great conversation. We could keep going for hours, I'm sure, but I want to let you get back to finding the next great space companies.
Well, thanks, Ryan. I appreciate it. It was a real pleasure to join you today.
Alrighty, gang, that is it for Pathfinder episode 0002 from Payload. Thanks to Rob for the insightful conversation and for bringing his encyclopedic knowledge of all things space to bear. And a huge thanks to all of y'all for tuning in. To get all of our future newsletters for your ears, don't forget to subscribe to Pathfinder on your favorite podcast platform. And if you like what you heard, we'd love it if you would rate and review Pathfinder on Apple or Spotify. I'm Ryan Duffy signing off, and I'll see you back here next week.